Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Since we've had some technical difficulties, we're going to just give a few minutes for some people to sign in and get everything set up. So just give us about 60 seconds and we'll go ahead and get started. Just if anyone, though, on the line here can just let us know that they can see my screen and also hear us. That way we know that we're good to go once we give that moment of time. All right, thank you everyone for your patience and dealing with the technical difficulty that we had today, but we're gonna go ahead and get started with our webinar. We know that your lives are really busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We wanted to make this webinar about how customer success and sales teams can use the Pendo data because Pendo initially was built for product managers, but a lot of different teams are able to use this data to get more information, really help within your job and make you more successful. So what we'll be going over today, we'll be talking more about how you can create different segments. So at a high level, you can see your accounts and see the health and at-risk accounts, but also diving in a little bit deeper to see how they're doing and how you can build out those reports to be able to showcase that data to different departments that you'll be working with. Pendo allows you to do in-app messaging. So we want to show you different creative ways that you can provide messaging to your users within the application instead of just having to email them. Within the customer success organization, we talk a lot about how you can identify if someone is healthy or at risk, how you can use the data to determine that without you just kind of guessing overall. And then there's a lot of different integration tools that you can use within Pendo. So we're going to go into that further. So we also will be taking time for questions. So if you have questions throughout, feel free to reach out to them or reach out to us, and we'll be able to get a hold of you and respond to those as well. And my name is Erin Wilkinson. I'm on the customer success side of things, so I will be kind of going into how my team uses Pendo data and uses our app. And I also have Emily Williams here on the sales side of things to talk on that side. Perfect. So through the different segments that you can create to dissect and slice and dice all the data that Pendo has to offer, you can always look at them as an overview and high level, but on the success side, you typically have your own accounts that you want to be looking at. So you can look at all of your accounts and see what the pulse is, how they're doing, who's signing in. but a lot of times you want to look into them a little bit deeper. So I myself use different segments of creating at risk because I want to know who are those clients that might potentially cancel, then I need to maybe give a little bit more hand holding to and reaching out. So for myself to determine that, I do number of days active, and if they haven't been signing into my application more than 10 days, I want them to be signing in a little bit more than that. So for this segment on the left-hand side, I did it based off of days within the last 30 days. And then assigned to myself. So that's the Pendo stuff that we're sending over so I can dissect those at-risk clients, and then I can be able to reach out to them. On the right-hand side, and customer success, there's always an upcoming renewal that you have to be focusing on. So I just want to know as a pulse what my next 90 days are going to look like. Who should I be reaching out to? Who should I be starting that discussion for renewal? So I'm not in a bind right at renewal time. I've already started that discussion because I had the advanced look to see who's coming up.
And this is Emily from the sales team. So we use segments a little bit differently in sales. The one that we live most out of is just a trial account segment. You'd think it would be a little bit too noisy to be looking at all of the customers at once. So we set a segment for current customer equals false. And what you're looking at on the screen is actually what I look at daily, multiple times a day. So we took out the column where it identifies the trial user, but you can see here some of the criteria that I'll look at when I go to the accounts page, and I'll sort by the last visit so that I can consistently look and see how active my trial customers have been, but also, how many users they have, how much time they've spent, and you can see we have some other data points such as, the features tag that they have or pages. So that's probably the most common use case just to help measure that engagement. But we also have been known to use this more so to eliminate having to go ask the success team specifics. So great example is, I'm getting ready to travel to the DC area, and I want to take a couple customers out to dinner, or, just understand how customers that I have already reached out to, like, are they actually using the product, or are they more of the purchaser? Because sometimes the person who buys the platform isn't going to be your most active user. So I can go check out and see who within that company has been active in our product so I can get in touch.
So you are able to dissect, but like I was saying, you are able to reach out to those people that you're segmenting through an in-app messaging. So on the customer success side, we will do some sort of in-app messaging. We had some new people on our team that joined, and they reached out through an in-app message to introduce themselves instead of having to email blast everybody, and they did that on a segment. My example right here is just giving a quick hello in-app messaging, letting them know that the renewal is coming up. So my email is not going to be a big surprise to them when I reach out, letting them know that their contract is up, and to start that discussion, or they could be reaching out to me directly as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. Have your smiling face like I have in mine here, or just a quick little message and blurb to let them know that you're reaching out.
So this is a really good example on how we have used this at Pendo, and how you could potentially use this. So typically, your support team will have the best gauge on this, but the types of questions that you get commonly, things that may be unclear, you can go ahead and try and prevent some of these common questions. And this was something that had happened at Pendo. We had actually gotten a lot of questions about, I'm not seeing any of my data I just installed. We see this a lot in the beginning of a sales trial. And a lot of people weren't realizing that the last 7 days or the last 30 days segments did not include the current calendar date. So we added in this tooltip here that it only shows up when you're hovering over the date selector, and then you can click on it and get that message. So it was able to actually eliminate a lot of those support questions and confusion that we had gotten. We didn't want to change the actual UI or the way that the product functioned, because our existing customers already understood that, and it would probably just confuse them more. So this was a great workaround for that. So another sales example we use, but this obviously can be used for customers as well, was when we went to Dreamforce. We also done other events, like SaaStr and some more regional events. We can target specific customers or specific regions and let them know that we're going to be in the area, and then use a Pendo poll to ask them if they're interested in meeting with us. And this is just a really easy way to get that quick feedback, so we can potentially arrange some events. So when we were in Dreamforce, we had a dinner, and it was because we launched this to our customers.
Great. Now, another thing that you can use with in-app messaging is using for the NPS scores. So at Pendo, the customer success team owns the NPS score, and we really are utilizing it and have done different things to figure out what's the best way to be approaching and reaching out to the right person. We've done our trials and errors with that. We found that the banner at the bottom of the page was the best way that we were getting the response after they've signed into the application. So that way we're not bugging anybody before they're signing into the application. So we've tested that out and fixed that for you so you don't have to do our errors. But what we do is when a new user signs into your account, Pendo automatically will give that person a visitor 1 to 100 number. So we're easily setting up for you to be able to randomly select and segment who gets the NPS score, so that you're not having to ask everybody every single month for that score. So you can segment and get those back. Now, the really cool thing with Pendo is, we really own these NPS scores, and we want everyone in the company to get excited when we get a good response, or to really see, maybe there's areas that we really need to work on within our product. So we use within our Zapier integration, we push all of the results straight to Slack so everyone can see those survey results. So that is something that you can do with an additional integration key at an additional cost, but it is really nice so that everyone can see those wins, and then we can really focus on things and areas that we need to work on. But it's just nice that within Pendo you're able to do that, the messaging to get that back. Perfect. So we did get a question that someone was asking, what happens if the visitor skips the NPS survey? They just don't hit a response. So if they X out of it, we're not going to pop it up to that person again. They just don't give you that survey score back. But that was a good question.
And also, too, some of our customers have found, though, that they're getting about 2 times the response rate by doing it in-app as opposed to via email. So even if they do skip the, response, that quarter or that month, however you decide to circulate it, they may respond another time. So that is positive. Okay, so our in-app messaging, and this actually was something that I instituted when I first started working here, because we didn't really have a great way to end a trial. We had the trials that would expire, but a lot of that really was, empty threats. There was no way to actually turn it off without asking the customer to uninstall. So we created this light box, and if you've noticed with the light boxes that you can create in Pendo, it blocks out the screen behind it. And typically there is a dismiss button in the top right-hand corner, but we were able to hide that. And it's really easy to do that in your instance of Pendo. All you have to do is go into the CSS tab of that guide, and you should see in there something called the Pendo Close Guide icon, and there will be a display in there. It says Display Inline, and if you change that to Display None, it completely hides that X button. So most non-technical folks wouldn't be able to move past that. If they're very technical, sometimes they can go into the console and delete that and get past it. But it gives us total visibility on who actually has seen it. And shockingly enough, as soon as you have that trial expire, if they haven't been responding to you, or do your phone calls or emails, they're pretty much going to get in touch with you that next day if they are truly interested in moving forward with your product. So this could also be done not necessarily in a trial or a sales fashion, but even if you have sort of a low touch or self-service model with your platform, and you want to let your users know that their bill is past due. That's another good use case. Not something that we do here, but in some businesses it certainly would be a quick non-engineering way to block their access from the product. Okay, so the onboarding functionality, many of you who've been in the product and have seen the bottom right-hand corner, we have our own Pendo on Pendo icon. So we jokingly call this Pendoception internally. It gets very confusing to some of us that we use our own product on our product, but it's also very effective because we've been able to customize our launcher. So if you've ever used the launcher activation for your guides, the standard one typically says need help at the top, and it gives a list of guides, but we did customize ours. So then in addition to having specific walkthroughs with the checklist beside them, you can also click on that Help Center Resources link at the bottom, and it links out to our help site. But it was an initiative, those walkthroughs was an initiative for, the entire organization. We had representation from sales, customer success, services, engineering, product, and we were able to actually identify what were the areas we thought that users needed to actually go through to get the basics when they first came into the application. And these were what we came up with. A big part of that comes from the fact that while we are high touch and we want to speak to every, prospect and every account, the reality is we may not be that first experience within the first, 2 minutes of their usage, and we want them to be able to get started before they get on the call with us. This is certainly something that you can get into your account. We have an onboarding package. If you wanted to work with our services team, you can definitely get in touch with your customer success rep. But the standard one doesn't have the checklist format. The standard is going to say, need help. It has your list of guides, and it can give them some basics. So, if you want some more training on that, we're definitely available to help you on that.
So as I was saying before, our customer success team uses Pendo data to determine who are at risk and who our healthy customers are, instead of just really guessing from the people who we hear from the most. So the customer success team uses this format, breadth, depth, and frequency, to determine who are at risk and who's healthy. So within breadth, you want to make sure that a number of people are signing into your account. So it's not just one person. If they left the company, then your champion leaves, and then you're not really sure who you should be reaching out to. So we really like to make sure that there's quite a few people reaching out or going into our application and using. Depth is, are they using those sticky features that are making them going to come back year after year because there's something in your product that's so valuable that they can't do without? So we want to make sure that they're not just using one feature, they're using quite a few to determine that. And then frequency is, how many days are they logging in? So you don't want them to just be doing one day for a few short minutes. Are they logging in 10 out of 30 days, 25 out of 30 days? How often are they signing in? So this gives a little breakdown of how we break this down versus healthy, improvement, and at risk. And our team has a meeting every week where we really look at those at-risk customers to figure out how we can move the needle on them. And I love when I do my initial kickoff calls with new customers, I always will look at your account level, and just by adding a field with that says number of days, and I move the segment based off of who's signing in the most 25 out of 30 days. Typically when I do that, right up at the top of that bar will be someone that you consider one of your healthy customers. So when you look at one of those healthy customers, really look at what specific features that they're using that makes them sticky, coming in over and over again, have many users, and then try to figure out how you can get your at-risk customers to use those features by reaching out, scheduling more trainings with them, send them some more one-to-many emails or in-app messaging to kind of highlight those certain features that you want them to use to improve their overall health as a customer of yours. So are at risk. If we only have 1 to 2 active users signing in, we know that, maybe they are at risk and we should be reaching out to them. If they're not logging in as often enough, we know that we need to be doing something better with that. So using this kind of metrics to help figure out who's healthy and not, and using that Pendo data that you can visibly see instead of just kind of doing a guessing game.
And to add on to that from a sales perspective, while these metrics obviously are a little bit different once they're a customer, from the sales side, we were able to measure, how do our installed customers who end up purchasing, how do they actually end up using that trial period compared to those who don't end up purchasing? And, obviously, as you'd expect, people who purchase the product, they spend more time in it. But we were able to find they spend actually 2 times the amount of time, as well as have 2 times the amount of visitors. And that's important to know, as opposed to knowing that it's 3x or 4x. It kind of gives you that benchmark on who you need to get engaged. And, as you're trying to plan for, all right, who's actually going to become a customer, how do we prepare our success team, whether it's really looking good or it's probably not going to happen.
So as I said before, we do have some other integrations available. The first one that we want to talk about is the Salesforce integration that we have. We know that a lot of customers are using Salesforce. Your customer success and sales teams specifically use Salesforce quite often to house really all of the data of information. You can send that information to Pendo. This is an example of what we're sending over to our Pendo instance on the account and visitor level. So not only can you see that in Salesforce, but this is a better way for you to be able to dissect the information within Pendo as well. The one things that are really helpful is, within Salesforce, I'm able to send over which accounts are mine from that CSM assign field that I have there. We have different stages that we have people in. That way I can see, are they a new client? Is this something that I should just be monitoring? On the sales side, we have to know when the free trial has ended, which is fantastic, so that you know who Emily should be following up with. So there's a lot of different things within the Salesforce fields that you can send over. This is an additional cost within the Salesforce integration, and it pushes and pulls in and out. So it's just a nice thing to add more. Really, the more information that you're adding into Pendo, the more that you're going to be getting out of it.
Also, we did, and this is a great time to bring this up, we did have a question about NPS scores, and pushing them back into Salesforce. So the next slide is actually going to show, some of the data that we push into Salesforce. You can certainly push any NPS score to an account level. Right now, what we are passing in, since we live a lot of our time in Pendo, we haven't really seen as much need for us to have our NPS score in our Salesforce instance yet. But this is a great example of the data that we use on an opportunity level. It's certainly, I believe it's also on the account as well. But it gives you a sense of, how much time is that account spending, how many users, and you can see we have number of pages and features, which is obviously an important metric for us. But you could do something similar to, a sticky feature in your product. So let's say you're an email marketing solution, and you know that every time they hit send or save or some sort of action button that starts a new campaign, that that's a really high indicator of success within that specific account. Well, you could actually pass over the number of clicks on that specific feature within the past 30 days, 60 days, so that you could really quickly see that metric inside of Salesforce. And use Salesforce workflows to send out an email report to everybody once a week. So using that data, beyond just the, how much time are they spending, that kind of information can be extremely valuable as well.
And another thing to add within the Salesforce is I know that sometimes you may be limited to how many seats you have available. So you can put this information, anything from Pendo, you can push it into Salesforce. But Pendo, you do have unlimited seats, so you can always have people have access. We just know a lot of success teams and sales teams use specifically Salesforce and really don't want another thing to have to log into, so you can push that information in there.
We had one more question about Salesforce IDs. So once you actually have purchased the Salesforce integration for your account, our success and support team will be able to enable a wizard. And that wizard is under your install settings and data mappings, and it'll actually walk you through how to connect those Salesforce IDs to the accounts. So we have a support article on that as well that we can definitely send offline.
Perfect. So another integration that we have available, I spoke about this before, but the Zapier integration, or Zapier, still always challenge of what is the right way to say it. But we use this to use within email alerts and kind of connect Pendo data to other applications such as Slack. So one thing we use with our Zapier integration is anytime a new user registers within Pendo, we want to send them a just quick welcome email alongside of sending them a nice little in-app message. But within Zapier, we will alert you through, it just kind of alerts us for us to trigger out an email to send a welcome. Also, if there's any inactive users, so if someone hasn't signed in within the last 28 days, we want to know where they are, because you can't send an in-app message to someone who's not signing in. So we send a quick little email for those inactive users. And like I said before, we will, anytime someone gives us an NPS survey, we connect through Zapier the response through Slack. If you are interested in any of these integrations that we were talking about, feel free to reach out to your account executive or your customer success manager. We'll give you more information as there is an additional cost to those, and we just have to update a few things within your account for you to have that access of that integration key.
Well, perfect. So we've had a lot of questions along the way, both in the chat box privately, as well as ones we've answered, while on the call. But I did want to give this opportunity, to open up the floor. If you have any questions, you can chat them, and we'll discuss them online. Or there's also a Q&A section; you can type them in there. But just any specific, or unique use cases that you might have. For your customer success organization or your sales team that you think might be valuable in applying Pendo to.
Perfect. So we did have one question about, can you target the in-app messages based off of the segment that you create? And you absolutely can. Within the in-app messaging, you are able to select, it's always going to default that you're going to send it to everyone. So if you are going to send a specific message to someone, it is important that you do update that segment. It's the same that you would do on the visitor and account section within the Pendo application. But it's, there's a lot of different filters based off of the metadata that you're sending over that you can target who you want to see that individual message. Another thing to note with that, make sure that when you are doing that message that you're selecting which page you want the message to be displayed on. You don't want to just say site-wide. Site-wide is really anywhere that Pendo is installed within your application. So you don't want it to be in before they sign in, they get a message. Maybe do it on like a dashboard page or on another page you want them to receive that message. So there's two things that you can segment that to.
So we had one that I was hoping to get a little more clarity on, but I'll answer it the way I think it was intended. So the question was, how do you export a CSV of reports at the overview level, meaning the usage graph and feature usage matrix? I assume this is getting data just on accounts overall, so that you can pull out, are the features being used and how many visitors on this account, that kind of a thing. And you can actually do that when you go into both the accounts and visitors tab within Pendo. You'll see that at the very bottom, you can create just, basically a matrix on the fly, and just to the right above that, and apologies, we can't really demo live on this Zoom, it's a little laggy, but there's a button that says Actions, and that allows you to actually export that as a CSV, or you can save that as a report. And those reports are always accessed from either the accounts or the visitors page. Up at the very top, you'll see another tab for you to access those saved reports.
Awesome. So we had another question about if there are other integrations other than Zapier. We do have the option for you if you want to take the Pendo data outside of Pendo. We do offer that you can have API access to be able to slice and dice the data the way that you want, and kind of be a little bit more customizable from that. So no, that's also available. So if you want to reach out to your account executive or your customer success manager, we can give you more information on that as well.
So this is probably a better question for you, Erin. Question of where in Pendo are you viewing the roll-up of healthy accounts versus those that aren't actively using? You know, are you doing that in your account reports, or where do you manage that as a success manager?
Yeah, awesome question. So everybody has when you first sign into your Pendo account, there is a dashboard. And within the dashboard, that view is by user. So anything, how you customize your dashboard is going to be only viewed for you and no one else. So within that, you can create different segments and different boxes and dashboards and things like that you can have next to each other and side by side, so you can see that. So for one box, I would have at risk and seeing who are my at-risk customers and then who are those healthy ones. And it's nice on the dashboard that you're able to customize that and have them side by side.
Okay, here's a question about messaging, and great questions, guys. Keep them coming. Much appreciated. Did you do A and B testing on these guides and come up with best practice so we can use that and save our time in doing our own A/B testing? Would you still recommend we do our own? I would say probably the biggest A/B test that we did was, and we actually have a blog post about this, was on our delivery of our NPS survey. And this really probably is appropriate for any survey or question that you're trying to get some sort of feedback from your users. We did half of them with a light box and half of them with a banner. And we found that while we got a much higher response rate with the light box, the score was actually lower. Now, I'm not a data scientist, so I don't know if it was statistically significant, but we really believe that part of it was the nuisance factor of having their flow interrupted to ask how much they liked us, as opposed to something that's a little less intrusive and is a banner at the bottom. We still definitely, would recommend that you test out maybe non-poll questions, different versions, if you feel that that's going to be valuable. And it doesn't even need to be A and B. Using that sample group functionality, you're going to be able to say, let's launch this maybe to 5% of our users. And that's where Erin mentioned earlier that every user within Pendo, so any user of your product that Pendo has ever seen will be randomly assigned a sample group number between 1 and 100. So if you expand the details on any visitor, you'll see that there's a metadata field called sample group. And it's just a randomly assigned number. So when you're creating a segment, if you do sample group, is between 1 or greater than or equal to 1, and sample group is less than or equal to 5, that would be a truly randomized sample of 5% of your users. So it's just really up to you and your organization.
Well, so I had another question if someone was asking how many guides would you say you have each user see? It really kind of depends. It's nice to have a lot of those guides set for the launcher, so you're not really popping up one message after another. Another thing to really use the Pendo data and the paths and funnel feature within Pendo to really see if there is a need for the guide itself. Guides are fun to create, but you don't want to just be creating them just to create them. So really just kind of think of overall how many messages and alerts do you really want to be popping up. And having that launcher is nice because they're really just saved in there, that they can activate them when they really need them. Good. So I also had another question about our event that we're having next week. So Pendemonium is happening next week and asking if we're going. And we will be there. We hope that you're there too. We're really excited about our first user conference. So come find Emily or I, and we'll be happy to chit chat a little bit more about how you use Pendo.
All right, 2 final questions, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up so y'all can get back to playing around with Pendo. One question is around sort of a follow-up to the intrusion of a lightbox message. The top instances or scenarios that make the lightbox message good is actually when you are announcing a new feature, because it's something that gives them a reward. They get to try out a new functionality, but also when you're kicking off a walkthrough. So when you have a guide that is inside of the launcher, when they click on it, it's great to have a lightbox start off that walkthrough saying maybe what they're about to see, maybe giving them a video that they can watch, things like that. Those are two really good use cases where it's still valuable to interrupt their experience. And then we had another question, and this one would be good for you, Erin, because you're kind of in there building those better. Are there best practices for how long an individual guide should be? Should it be 3 steps? Should it be 140 characters? What are the experiences there?
Yeah, so really the best practice with guides is making them short and sweet. Really nothing more than 5 steps. Just have to think of how you want your clients and customers to be going throughout your site, and how long, we see that if the more steps are in a guide, the more that they're going to be dismissed and not really see them. So I would say 3 to 5 would really be a good number, and make the messaging short. You really don't want it to be a novel or anything like that. People's attention spans are a little short, so you just want to make sure that you're making the messaging, and really they're there as a guidance to guide people through what you want them to be doing within your application, without really, you can send them to a help article that has more information and a lot more text and things like that, but making the guide short and sweet is ideal.
Well, and to elaborate on that, we did a study, and there's another blog post on this. Apparently, I consume a lot of our content. I'm sure the marketing team would be glad of that. I think it was a 70% drop-off after step 1 in a walkthrough was what we typically saw. And that's why the content that you put in step 1 is the most important, because, that's going to be where they decide, do I want to continue through these steps? Can I get the information that I need from step 1? Maybe I just forgot where to start, and then it points me to the first step, and then I can figure it out from there. Just because somebody hasn't gone through all of the steps of your walkthrough doesn't mean that it's not successful. It just means that you sort of pointed them in the right direction, and maybe they figured out what they wanted. And that's where I actually love the feature that we have, where you can, on your guide analytics, so the guide metrics page, you can overlay a feature, the number of clicks on a feature, on top of the views of the guide. Definitely get in touch with us, if you want more detail on that. But it shows that they're adopting the functionality or the thing that you're trying to get them to do, as opposed to adopting the guide, because really that's what you're trying to do overall.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm glad everyone was able to sign in, and we will be sending out a follow-up recording. So if you had to duck out or want to share this with other people within your team, we'll be sending a recording within a follow-up email. But we really appreciate your time, and everyone have a great rest of your day.